Hi, this is Jen Smith from the University of Rhode Island's Graduate School of Library and Information Studies program. I'm enrolled in LSC 531 with Renee Hobbs this semester, where we're studying young adult literature. And today I'm going to walk you through how I research, read, and annotate an article. We've been discussing a variety of topics in class related to young adult literature, but one that jumped out to me was from a reading last week from our textbook Teaching Young Adult Literature Today by Judith Hine and Jeffrey Kaplan. In particular, the chapter was titled Young Adult Literature in Cyberspace, How Teachers Are Following Their Students into New Literacies, and it was by James Blasingame. And he talked about and touched on how teachers have evolved and started using new technology in the classroom. So this was interesting to me, and I wanted and wondered what this means for librarians. And are librarians doing everything they can to adapt to all this new technology out there? Can they further engage young adult patrons? And what are they doing to do that? So my annotation today is going to focus on the question, how can librarians further engage and connect with young adult patrons? And I actually did find an article that's annotated here. And I will go through my research strategies and what I've done to find this article. And we'll start that process now. So I used EBSCOhost. I started my research by logging into EBSCOhost, which is accessed. It's an online database platform that the University of Rhode Island students have access to. And I selected a variety of databases that you can see up top here. And I've done this because I felt that these databases were relevant to the topic, my topic, and I decided that mainly education and library databases would be best for this search. So once I decided which databases to use, I chose my keywords, which are marketing, young adult, and libraries, and I used a Boolean search strategy here. And then I decided to limit my search results to full text because I wanted to be able to access the entire article or journal, and also scholarly or peer-reviewed journals because I felt that was very important in determining whether or not the source was going to be reliable. So once I decided to narrow it down to that, I performed my search by just clicking on search, and I've already done it here, so these are some of the articles that came up. And I was intrigued by this first one here, Top 10 Tips for Marketing to Teens, so I clicked on that. And that brings me to this page here that gives a little bit more detail. And I see that it's published from a source, Young Adult Library Services, and it's a recent article here, published only in 2013, so fairly recent. And I also want to focus here on the abstract because that's very important, and that will save me a lot of time by not reading the full article if I feel it doesn't apply to answer the questions that I have. So I found that this is going to be an article that I'm interested in, and I will bring up the full text version here. So this is opened in Adobe Reader, and you can see I've already gone through and highlighted and annotated most of it, but I'm going to walk you through this process step by step right now. So the first thing that I like to do when I find an article that I want to read and annotate, I like to bring up the full text, and I like to go through the whole thing, just a quick overview to see what's ahead of me. So I just take a quick visual check of the article, and I can kind of see how the article is laid out and how the article is written. And immediately I notice that the author is using actual numbers to number her top 10 tips for marketing. So that's great because that automatically makes it very clear to the reader what her tips are. So, and I've highlighted each one of those already. But that's a very clear way to do it. I also noticed some bullet points here that she's made in some of the underneath some of the numbers. And getting down closer to the end here, I can also see her some of the references she uses. So that's great. I have an idea of what the article entails. I can also notice this big gray box here that has additional tips that might not fit into her top 10 list, but they were obviously relevant and she wanted to mention them. So, okay, so going back to the top, this is when I would start a thorough and in-depth reading, which I've already done, but I'll take you through how I determine what I highlight and what I underline and things like that. So I usually tend to highlight key ideas and topics of interest, and I underline resources to check out later that I want to remember that to go back to. So in this first paragraph here, you can see I've done a little bit of highlighting and underlining. So the highlighting were key ideas. So she talks about low-cost options for marketing tactics are readily available on the web. So that's a key idea that she'll be discussing later on. And she also mentions don't forget to check out this website. So that's definitely something I'll want to go back to for more information later on. So once I determine that, I start a thorough reading and just going through and highlighting things that jump out, key ideas. I also can add comments. So when I'm thinking and processing what I'm reading, I can jot down little comments to myself to trigger my memory back to what I was reading and thinking while I'm going through. So here I noticed that the author has experience in the field, so she's going to be able to tie in her experience with her own research. So I thought that was great. I also added one up here and I said I thought this would be a very time-consuming process when she talks about keeping up with teens' conversations online using social media. I thought, oh boy, that can be time consuming, but if you have someone for the job, it's a great way to keep track of that. So I asked the question too, who would be in charge of this task in the library? And is that something that the library would have resources to fund? So things of this nature, I'll comment and just to hopefully help me remember what I'm reading and what I'm thinking as I go through. So I also, as I go down here, I can notice I highlight just single words too, just key ideas, um, like copyright and fair use are seen here. So those are things that I want to make sure I remember. Copyright and fair use are both important when posting things online and just making sure that you are sticking to those rules and laws so that the library doesn't get in trouble. And that's about everything that I have for this article, but basically just remembering to highlight key ideas and topics that you're interested in and underlining or somehow distinguishing things that you want to go back to is a great way um, to trigger the memory. Also, adding comments. Don't be afraid to add comments because that's another good source for yourself when you're going back to this article and looking back. And don't forget to check out their references because that can be a good jump off and source for your further research. So I hope this has helped. This gives you a overview of how I like to do my research and annotate articles of interest. And I hope that you have good luck with your research as well. Thanks for taking the time to watch this.